Hello everybody, welcome back to Woodworking Wisdom. Today we have escaped the workshops. We are out here in the glorious countryside in our HQ at Axminster in Devon. We are looking at the compact multifunction workbench. So we're looking at that PARF system. We're going to show you just how portable and how we can kind of bring all this stuff outside without lugging great big benches and things like that. How we can get really accurate cuts using this fantastic PARF system in a really kind of portable and easy way. We are going to be making a little set of shelves or a book stand or something like that. Okay, so let's get set up. So we've got a bunch of kit here, so we can move some of this kit and we're going to pop it on the bench. We've got our rail saw here with the guide rail and extraction. We've got a router because we're going to route some slots. The all-important compact multifunction workbench. A bunch of accessories here and we'll show you those. And then there's some other accessories that we've got down here, a fence and a square. These are all available separately or you can buy them combined in a pack. But let's get moving over to the bench. Okay, so we've secured our little workbench here, clamped onto our picnic bench, and we are going to set up for our first few cuts, and we want to be able to do repeatable cuts and maybe change the size of the dimensions a little bit. We are going to cut the top and 2 shelves for our little cabinet. So the way to do that, here we've got the PARF. This is the Super Dog accessory kit. And this has got all the stuff that we're going to need to set up our rail saw and make those really nice 90-degree cuts. So first thing I'm going to do is we want some sort of stop over this part of the workbench. So this is a really nice little system. We've got 2, or essentially dogs, and they've got a hole right the way through. We need to push them down, make sure they're nicely seated, and then we can just tighten them up really simply with a little collar. So that works just like the Super Dog. So when we twist this, it pushes down, expands these little rings, and then they become really solid, held in the bench. We're going to pop this little armature through. Just back that off, and then that face there is held really square to our little perforated dogs. We can set that, that's not essential right now. We'll set that up in a minute. Now we're going to find our piece of timber. We need to cut this at 350 mil. So I'll grab my piece of timber in a minute. But what we need are a couple of dogs here and here, and we can always reposition this as we go along. We need to set up our fence coming across here. First job, we need to mark off our 350 mil. So just marking off 350 mil, which is going to be the width of the cabinet or bookshelf. So just a little pencil mark there, and I'm going to get my square and just extend that line so that we can follow that with the fence. So our fence is going to come in here, so I just need to relocate this little pup. I'm going to push that along one, and you'll notice that they sit down below the surface of our piece of timber. And now we want some of these. These are the Super Dogs, these are great. So just tightening that one, that's going to keep it at 90 degrees to the workpiece and really hold that in there nice and solidly. and we want one either side of the workpiece. Oops. So again, just tightening that top bit, and then we've got a couple of rail clips in the kit. And you can see how quick and easy it is to set things up. I'm just bringing my pencil line back to the edge of the fence here. So we need to bring that line just up to the edge of the fence. So we can do that. And you can see already that it's perfectly square to the fence, where our piece of timber is up against our pups and our super dog here. And then because it's held across this way, that's what's giving us our lovely 90 degrees, really nice and accurate. Now I'm going to bring in our little stop, and that's really going to act as a register at this point. So if we wanted to make repeat cuts at that length, we could saw across here, remove this piece, push the board along till it comes up against that stop, and we could just keep going like that and keep creating those smaller cuts. So these are the little anti-slip worktop protectors. These are going to rise the piece of timber up off of the workbench so that we can cut with our rail saw. And also they have this non-slip material which is going to really help secure everything when we're on the workbench. So we're going to put a couple up this end. So we're going to pop some more of these little non-slip worktop protectors in. And we've set up with our fence, we know our cut's going to come across these holes, so we're not putting any in these holes here. Because we've already set our stop, we can again use that as a register and just lift the fence, pop our workpiece down and slide it up to the stop, and then up against the dogs. And then we've fallen straight back on our line at 350 mil. So we're going to set up with our TS55. This is the Festool's rail saw. Of course, you could use whatever rail saw you have, all work in a similar way, and you'll just have to set your fence to your cut line. So popping the power in there, we want extraction 2. So then we're ready for our first cut. Really important that we set the depth of the cut on this one. We don't want to plunge down and cut into our workbench. And that's what those little spacers are for. They're going to give us a little 3 or 4 millimeters above the workstation so that we can cut right the way through and not cut into our workbench. So we've got a PPE, I'm wearing a pair of goggles, they're a must. The hearing protection is optional, but I'm keeping them close by. If I feel that this is getting a bit loud, then I can just pop those on. Okay, so we can take our first cut. Perfectly square. So we're going to use our repeat stop to cut one more of those. We're going to cut the shelves now, which are actually 10 mil smaller. So what we can do, if we come in a bit closer onto this part, we can shift this 10 mil that way, which means the board is going to be 10 mil shorter. These are going to be our shelves, which are going to slot in to a little rebate that we're going to cut on the sides. Those rebates are going to be 5 mil on each side, so the the shelves are going to be 10 mil smaller than the top piece. So we're going to slide this 10 mil that away, just checking that we're on the 5 there, which we are, so we can bring this 10 mil along. We've got a lovely little scale on here, and we can tighten that back off. And now when we feed our board in under the fence here, it's going to butt up against that, giving us a 10 mil shorter board. The fence isn't moving. And really nice to be able to keep the fence in situ. Slide your next board in and just make that cut. Again, just double check that we're up against our dogs. Making sure everything's nice and flat, and we're good. So hose just caught there. Let's rotate that around. Good. So I had to stop mid-cut there, but we've still got our perfectly straight cut. This one can come out, and we need one more shelf. We can come up against our dogs at the top there, and you can see we just need to trim a little bit off of this one. So again, make sure everything's seated down, and really nice to be able to remove a workpiece, pop it back in, and it being exactly the same setup. It will save you so much time. So we should have 2 shelves and a top, and the shelves are going to be 10 mil shorter than the top, and that looks pretty much bang on. Okay, so next job, we need to cut the sides. So we're going to cut a little rebate in the sides. You could do this on with the router on the fence, but we're going to show you another way that we're going to work with one of these UJK products, the fence and stop. Okay, so we've stripped down all the dogs and the fence and things like that we had set up for the cross cuts. We now want to route a slot through our piece of timber. We're going to be using the UJK fence and stop in conjunction with some super dogs. We're going to pop our piece of timber across here and then bridge across it with this fence, and we're going to use that to route a slot. So let's get set up for that. So this is going to be the side of our cabinet. I'm just going to push it up against that stop for now. We want our super dogs, and our slot is going to be 350 mil down the board, so we can mark that on with a pencil. So 350, so it's just past that line. Okay, so I'm just going to mark off our 350. I'm going to use a square just to make that a bit more obvious. And then we can go up against our stop for now. And we're going to have to come this way a little bit so that our super dogs can reach without fouling up against the stop there. So one super dog in there. And again, we're going to tighten these off, which is going to expand that little rubber O-ring in there and keep everything nice and straight. So we've got our super dogs here and a little pup, and that's what's going to keep everything nice and square. So if our board is registered up against those, we know that this is at 90 degrees to it, and that's what we're going to use as our guide for our router. Now our router has a 16mm cutter in it, which is the same width as the board. So when we route that slot, we know that that adjoining board is going to just sit nicely in that slot. And remember, we cut our shelves 10mm shorter, and they're going to work on both ends, so we need to cut 5mm deep into our piece of timber, and then everything's going to come together nice and square when we put it together. So I'm just going to align the pencil mark just to the edge of the cutter there, making sure that it's isolated, so this router is not plugged in just yet. We can rotate the cutter so that the cutter's just on the edge of that pencil line. That looks good. We can now bring this little stop in, this repeat stop, we can bring into here. Again, we can lock that off, and then when we come to do the next board, we can just lift this up, slide it in, and away we go. Need to just set the depth. So there's a couple of ways we could do this. On the turret here of the router, we can just loosen off the depth stop, push it down to the turret, and then we can align our little bit here with the 0, and then when we lift this arm up to the 5mm, we can then lock that off, and when we plunge the router in now, it's going to limit it to 5mm on that turret. Okay, so we're pretty much ready to cut this slot. What we want to do is just make this all a bit more stable, so we can use the T-slot in here with the conjunction with a couple of the little hold down clamps. These will just slide along. Obviously we don't want them to interfere with the router, so they're going to be just out the way of any kind of moving parts. That's pretty much got it, but let's just be extra cautious. Now that is really solid now. Our fence is down, flush to the workpiece, and we're ready to route. Really important that we have our goggles or any PPE that you're using is on, and we're going to plunge down into the board, and we're going to bring the router from left to right. So we can plug this in. Let's make sure we're not switched on. So we've got it held down nice and secure. We're now going to route from left to right when we're looking at the front of the router. We're plugged in, extractions on, and we can just turn the router on. We're going to plunge down right until this stop touches onto the turret. We know we're 5mm deep then. So, on with the router. We're going to So we've got our slot. So now we've got this repeat stop, we can remove this board by just undoing these two little clamps, switch them to the side because we're going to use them again in just a moment. We can lift slightly and just slide this board out. Pop that to one side for now. And with this repeat stop, we can just bring it up to here, up against our dogs. We can swing in our hold down clamps, and then we can route this now without making any pencil marks, without taking any more measurements. Just a really nice, quick and repeatable way of creating a slot that's in the same position as the other board. So we're good to go. So on with the router. Just release the plunge. We've got a little bit of breakout, but just a bit of abrasive across that top edge and that will all come off. And now we need to set up for our second slot. And we'll do it on this same board. Just going to swing that hold down clamp out a bit. We're going to take another measurement. So we're going to go another 350 mil from this detail. So again, just marking that off with a pencil. We're going to use our square just to extend that line, make it a bit more visible. So we have just reset the fence. So we've brought everything this way a little bit. We're going to use our stop again, and just like before, we need to align our cutter with our pencil line. I'm just rotating the cutter with the router unplugged so that we can plunge down and meet that pencil line with the edge of the cutter, and then we know we're going to get a pretty precise cut. Again, we need to make sure that we're up against our dogs, our super dog holding the fence here, and then we've got one of our little pups. And you can drop them in if you feel it's not quite stable. You can drop them in any position. Just make sure that our board is aligned to that. That is our register that gives us everything square. And again, I'm going to bring in this repeat stop. Really useful bit of kit. We can tighten that one off, and just like before, we can make this cut now, remove this board, put in the other one, and we can put another slot in exactly the same position. So release the plunge on the router. We're already set to our 5 mil depth. So we can plunge this in, and away we go. Okay, so we've cut our second slot. We now need to repeat that on our other workpiece. So we can just remove that one, bring in our other board, and we just need to lift it above these worktop protectors. They are really grippy, so sometimes we just need to lift that board a touch. We're good there, making sure we're registered up against all our pups and dogs. And we're just going to bring in these hold down clamps again, just to make sure nothing shifts. And lovely and repeatable, we can just cut our next slot without having to make any adjustments to any of this. The router depth is 5 mil still, so again, no adjustments need to be made there. Now we've got all our slots cut and they're all parallel to one another. Just a little bit of sanding just to tidy up any of this breakout. Okay, so we've cut all our component bits now. We've cut our little housing slots for the shelves to sit in. Now we're going to just attach the top, and we're going to use the Festool Domino to do that. And really nice, again, really nice on this workbench to be able to just swing things in and hold them on the vertical. So I'm just going to do it finger tight for now, then we can jostle the board around, make sure it's nice and flat to the table. So it's still a little bit of play in that, but it has got it gripped. And I'm just going to use something with a flat edge, going to push down on the top of that table. Make sure everything is flush with that, and then we can tighten these up. Let's just swing that one down a touch by hold the board there so it doesn't move, and then we can swing that part down because we don't want to catch that with the edge of the domino. So just double checking we're flush to the compact workbench there. Make sure everything's nice and tight, and this works a bit like a biscuit jointer. Again, we've got no power to it just yet, we'll pop that on in a moment, but we've got 2 stops under here. Really easy just to align those slots, and the way this is going to work, we're going to put our pressure on the top plate there, we're going to flick the switch and then just push this forward. And this works a bit like a router cutter, but it oscillates, it goes side to side, and it's going to cut us a slot. So let's bring power to it. So just aligning that to the side, my little stop's engaged to the side of the board. We can just turn the domino on, advance it forward and off. And we can bring it to the other side. Again, just bring that little stop up too. See on there, we've got our 2 slots ready to fit with our dominoes. Okay, good. So we want to do the other end of that board just the same as we have done, so kind of finger tight with our clamps. Use something straight to bring it to the bottom there, tighten that one off. Same this side, just going to close that gap so we're flush with the top of the workstation, and tighten that off, and then away we go again. So up to our stop, turn the tool on, So really nice and quick and easy. Lovely tool. So we're going to bring in the upright now. Where we've got our slots here, we want those facing down. We want to look at the top face of or the outside face of our board. And we can do the same thing with the Domino here. We can use these little clamps just to bring that board nice and flat, and then that's not going anywhere. And again, we want to kind of align it to the side, but we're going to be using the top edge of the board this time as our kind of reference point. So same thing, we're going to use those stops to give us a quick alignment. Really nice and easy. We've cut our slots in the end here, and just remember each of these side panels has 2 grooves in it. We want to keep those grooves at the same, at the kind of back end of our project as we're cutting these slots for the Domino. Same here, want to make sure these slots are aligned. We can flip that over, push it to the edge of our multifunction workbench. We're going to bring in our little clamps, and it's really amazing just how solid all of this is. Okay, and just something I wanted to show you, we've increased the size of the slot on the uprights. That way we've got a little bit of movement, say something doesn't quite align. We've got a little bit of play when we pop the dominoes in. Okay, so just like before, just making sure that we're not going to foul on anything there, that the board is nice and flush to the edge there. We're going to locate on our little side stops on the Domino. And then the same the other end. And then we've got our slots. Okay, so we've used that Festool Domino to cut those slots, ready for almost like a biscuit or like a dowel. Now we're going to come to assembly. So we've, let's just remind ourselves what we've done. We've done our cross cutting on here. We did the repeat cuts to get everything to length. We have routed a groove for a shelf to sit in, and we've used a Domino to cut those holes for the dowels to go in, that we can join this all together. Really useful feature being able to clamp on the vertical there. That's a really nice thing to be able to clamp up on that apron, and also on top here. Now for assembly, just to help guide things and to keep things square, something to kind of butt up against, that we can pop in one of these squares. Let me just see where it lines up. So we've got one there and one there. There we go. So we've got one in here, one in there, and just one more of these little pups just down the bottom there. Okay, now we've got a really solid corner to work into, perfectly square. We're going to get a bit of glue on the go. So this is Type Bond 2. Oops, a bit generous for that. And then we've just got a little applicator which we'll use in a moment. So this is our top piece, and I'm going to pop that in there up against that square, and it should just sit. We're going to bring our side pieces in. Remember, we cut those slots, so we're going to have one on this side that just went in really sweet. And of course we can use that square, really helpful on assembly. We've got these here, and we'll just do a little dry run first. That's nice and square there. Lovely. We're going to use these slots to drop those shelves in. And we will glue this in just a moment. It's fantastic. So that's all going to come together really nicely, and we've got a really good square corner there. Brilliant. Okay, so just to disassemble again, I'm going to pop that over there. We're going to lay this flat and apply some glue in our slots. So be nice and generous with the glue. Let's bring our other one up as well. We've got a talking sheep in the background there. So we're going to pop a bit of glue. These dominoes are a bit like a biscuit. So when you apply the glue, these will swell up and really fill any gaps. They're really strong in there, so I'm just going to pop some glue on our dominoes here. They're sticking up out of this end piece, and we get some down on the sides, but we're going to pop that up against our square. We're going to use that to align on that side, and we want to work fairly fast now. We don't want these dominoes swelling up too much before we can get all our other components in. So let's just bring that one out of the way. We've got our shelves. I'm just going to pop them in there and there. Align our shelves. And then we can use our clamps across the top here just to bring everything in. Bringing the clamps right in line with the shelf there. But let's just check everything's nice and square, and that looks lovely. That one just needs a little pinch together, so I'm going to get the sash clamp across the top, and then we need to wait for that glue to dry. Nice and close like that. And that should pull in up on that top corner. So we're clamped both ways now. We've got we're clamped across the shelves and we're clamped end to end. So we're bringing this lid in. We need to give this a few hours to dry, and then we can sand everything back, get rid of any little kind of bits of breakout or fluff, remove any kind of beads of glue, and then that will be ready for an oil or a finish, whatever it is that you want to do with your cabinet. So there we have it, a little shelving unit made on that UJK compact multifunction workbench. Used with all those accessories, so we use those long dogs, the super dogs, which open up and expand into those holes, keeping things really accurate, using the rail saw which clips onto those dogs. We use that UJK fence and stop kit. We also use the repeat stop which comes in the accessory kit with the super dogs. So lots of different accessories and lots of different ways of working to keep things accurate, to keep things repeatable. And yeah, you can, this is just one example of lots of different things you could do for straight cutting on 90 degrees, for cutting slots, all those sorts of things, made really easy on a really compact little table, and nice to be able to bring that outside and work outside in the fresh air. Thank you so much for watching our woodworking wisdom. If you've liked this video, hit the thumbs up and subscribe, and we'll see you soon for more woodworking wisdom.